Bob's Burger started off on a pretty dark and murderous foot with its original concept centered around human flesh. Laura Bouchard himself even said he thought the show needed to be edgy to cut through, presumably the Simpsons and Family Guy-led adult cartoon demographic. It didn't end up going in that direction when it went to air, and it clearly didn't need it, but it took a while for the characters to catch up to the overwhelmingly loving and compassionate state that we see them in now. One of my favorite characters, Louise, functions as the family's wildcard and started off with her edgy meter cranked to max. If Bob's Burger was American Dad, Louise's archetype would fit comfortably in Rogers, but that's not quite the case anymore. Over many seasons on air, Louise's edge has dulled somewhat. Her character-focused episodes have become largely about her displaying emotion and vulnerability, and in some cases, acting as a voice of reason. This is a far cry from her wanting to cut off Gene's ear in season 1, so how did we get here? It may shock you, but the answer is pretty quickly. After all, Louise isn't an unfeeling reptile. She has her learning moments and emotional moments throughout the show, but a lot of her early character bits are based in anger, selfishness, and even violence. She was a hammer. It's not until around season 6 that she goes full softie, so let's look at her journey. It was Louise who initiated the human flesh plot point with her show and tell performance in the first episode. This is factory fresh Louise. She doesn't think beyond the immediate popularity points when she tells a pretty big lie about her family's struggling restaurant. Near the end, she gives a quick sorry that doesn't really mean anything and we move on. You could rinse and repeat this for the foreseeable future, and it's especially noticeable in Bed and Breakfast. Louise, understandably, lashes out when her safe space is invaded by Teddy as she goes full vengeance mode. After spraying Teddy with pheromones, traumatizing him and unleashing who knows how many beetles into the apartment above her family's struggling restaurant, Louise admits she can go overboard sometimes and agrees to apologize to Teddy. To be fair, her reaction is justified. Her lashing out, not so much. The outlier of this first season is in Spaghetti Western and Meatballs when Louise actually reflects and talks through her feelings. Louise is feeling left out of Bob and Gene's bonding, so she instigated some shenanigans with Choo Choo to get back at them. The methods are the same, but the difference is that the show takes time to explore Louise's emotions before everyone reconciles. This crack in her armor may be due to the fact that she has the most fun with Gene and Bob and feels especially hurt when she runs out of places to fit in. She enjoys time with her mother and sister for sure, but throughout the series, Louise clearly identifies as one of the guys in her family, and in this episode, makes her voice heard to get things back on track. This has become par for the course moving forward, but again, it takes a little while to ramp up. I think this takes a while because even though Louise is the baby of the family, they make her this wise beyond her years wheeler dealer at the start. Like with her art crawl grift or teaching Tina how to kiss and shish kebab, she's thinking up schemes, making fun of everyone and getting even when she needs to. This is great for her character and still persists in a lot of ways moving forward, but in the overall scheme of Bob's Burger and the Belcher family, early Louise will feel out of place 15 plus seasons later. A good example of this is in the very first episode of season 3, Erzy Rider. This is the introduction of Louise's bully Logan. He takes her beloved pink bunny ears from her after she pesters him and his friends, and Louise has a mini meltdown before trying to get them back, and when she's led to believe that her ears have been incinerated, the mini meltdown turns into mega revenge. She hires the one-eyed snakes to enact her revenge and, in her words, take Logan's ears. In the end, the dangerous biker gang doesn't mutilate a child, but based on how Louise was feeling, I'm sure she would have been fine or even happy if they did cut off Logan's ears. The anger and aggression she felt towards losing her bunny ears in season 3 is a stark contrast to how she felt about them in the movie 10 years later. In the Bob's Burgers movie, Louise is very insecure about her attachment to her ears. They're her security blanket, and the attachment is central to an overall feeling of being a baby that isn't brave enough to do anything. She gets her confidence back after being reminded of the bunny ears origin, but where we end up is very different from where we started. This growth is the result of giving Louise more focused screen time and developing out of her character quirks, obviously. Whether this be forming her first crush in Boys for Now or bonding with her asthmatic bestie Rudy for the first time in Carpe Museum, character growth is going to happen when you have almost 300 episodes under your belt. But the key is the direction of that growth, and in Louise's case, it is making her more of a kid and playing up the kid plot points. Despite her clearly exercising compassion in earlier seasons, the reason I chose season 6 as Louise's softie turning point is all because of The Haunting. I see this as the final and most important experience of her transformation. In The Haunting, Louise boasts being unscarable, and based on the haunted house montage, she's right. So Bob and Linda rally to plan Louise a haunted house tailor-made for her. It starts off lackluster, so Louise immediately goes off the rails to scare her parents instead. So now that the haunted house is over and it's time to go home, the real haunts can begin. Everything starts to go wrong around the haunted house, pipes start to creak, the power goes out, and a creepy neighbor gets involved. As the family gets chased around the house, Louise gets more uneasy about the very real scares, and in the end, she lets it all out. Louise got scared, and she loved it. What The Haunting did was show another facet of what Louise could feel. It It was also touched on a bit before this in The Kids Run Away. In that episode, Louise had a cavity but was afraid to get the filling. Completely understandable for a kid, but the way she acted out in that episode wasn't as raw and vulnerable as pure, heart-pounding fear. We also saw her learn a lesson after hurting her mom's feelings in mother-daughter laser razor, and we saw her open up about the possibility of not speaking to her dad for 20 years in Hawk and Chick. It's almost like the show had to teach Louise the emotions that we all knew she was capable of. She is 9 years old after all. They developed out Louise's emotional tool belt, and in my opinion, the haunting was the last piece. Fast forward to the present, Louise episodes are so much more colorful than the first few seasons. It's because writers never forget who Louise is. There are still episodes like Bridge Over Troubled Rudy after all. Louise says something mean to Rudy right at the beginning. She calls him a weenie, and she immediately feels bad about it. It doesn't take her another 15 minutes to figure out why she's wrong. The rest of the episode is her trying to make amends in the most inconvenient childlike way. There are also still episodes like Spider House Rules where Louise is her usual rugged and wild self, but this time around she's reflective of why people think her interests might be bad or weird. She asks why people don't like spiders or why they wince when she breaks glass bottles. Her parents sum it up perfectly by telling her that she's more than the dangerous things she likes to do. She's also thoughtful, kind, and imaginative. The show keeps on giving with For Whom the Doll Tolls. This is sort of a culmination of The Haunting and Bridge Over Troubled Rudy rolled into one. Louise still has trouble expressing herself in conventional ways, but uses her own uniqueness and dog carnage as a means of communication. She needs to tell Jean something really important, decides to use a dollhouse murder mystery to do it. What it amounts to is Louise, now a definitively soft cookie, telling her brother that he's wonderful and that she's sorry she isn't always as effortlessly wonderful as he is when it comes to being nice to others. She's still a little clunky with feelings and doesn't really care how long it takes or how convoluted her efforts are, but she is making a consistent effort. And hey, we don't mind how long it takes her because she's the baby of the family and she's still growing. Louise is far from one note and it works for the health of the show in the long run. Lauren Bouchard did what he said and committed to character. They have not gone astray and Bob's Burger is better than it's ever been. One of my favorite newer episodes is Jade in the Shade. It's pretty much a direct follow-up of the movie and they let Louise run wild with the childlike wonder. Louise fully believes that the Jade Jellyfish legend is real and is disappointed and devastated that her mom doesn't believe in it at all. The payoff of these real and believable episodes are well worth it, but don't take my word for it. The Plight Before Christmas and Amelia are two of the highest rated Bob's Burger episodes and they came out in the same season not that long ago. I'm not saying that every episode needs to be sad and emotional to resonate with audiences, but when a show takes leaps and tries new things with its characters, it pays off if it's done well. What Bob's Burger has done with Louise should be an example to every long-running show looking to stay fresh and relevant. It is many steps in the right direction.